Okay, so what we're going to talk about today is address book in ProLiant. So we're going to look at both the organization side of ProLiant, meaning the general area of the address book, and then also on the project-specific side of the address book. Most of the information we're going to cover is in the org side, but like I said, we'll cover some stuff on the project level as well. So first of all, when you're in ProLiant, the first thing you come to is your organization versus project. So like I said, we're going to go into organizations. And on the left side of your screen, you can see we've got the address book section here, and we'll be focusing on that one today. Under address book, we have the vendor companies. You really don't go into contacts much. I really don't know that I ever have gone into contacts, so I'm going to focus on the vendor companies mostly. We'll look at the org companies, and we'll also look at staff. So first of all, the vendor companies. There are basically 4 different types of vendors that we could have that would go into ProLiant. We would have a bidding kind of vendor, meaning we don't need a W-9 from them yet. We're not planning on paying them any money. We're just needing them to be in our system. For example, maybe our owner has a contract with somebody and they want to have access to our drawings in ProLiant, so we may give them access. So that might be a bidding person that you don't need to collect all their information. You just need to be able to get them in ProLiant so that they have an account. There's also the owners. That's going to be your C-type. Your C-type is the owner. You don't need a W-9 for them, but you do need to have basically all the other general information, just like you would a bidder, just like you would a vendor. You just don't need to have a W-9. Your regular vendor is going to be your suppliers, your subcontractors, anybody that you plan on paying money to. You would need to have a W-9 from them in order to make them set up in our system. And then there's also an N, which is not paid. I've not used that one before. I believe that it really works the same way as the bidding code. So we'll dive into that and look at those a little bit further here. So the first thing I want to point out on this screen here in ProLiant is the view that we're using. So if you can see here, the view is listed as vendor companies. That is a very good view to use, and the reason for that is this doing business as shows up here. If you were not using that column, if you were not using this view, this column would not show up. So let's see if there's an example here. Right here we've got this 17th and Dexie Union 76 Inc. If we were searching for LA Food Store, we would not find it because it wouldn't be a column in our search. So always make your view that vendor companies, so your doing business as column shows up, and you can search for people that way as well. It's really hard to search for somebody when you don't know what their possibly legal name is. You might think it's their legal name and it's not. So that's the first thing I would recommend. The next thing we'll do is go to creating a new vendor. Now, I don't actually have a new vendor that I'm going to create, but we can still go through all the steps and I can show you how you do that and what happens. I just won't be able to actually save and submit. So when you click on the new button, you'll be given a new ProLiant notification here, and what you'll fill in is the information that's that is starred. Again, you can see that this tax ID number is not starred because it's not required for all of our new vendors that we set up. It's not required for the owners, it's not required for the bidders, but it is going to be required for anybody who you're planning on paying. So let's just say we've got a legal name company of ABC Electric. That is information you're pulling directly from the W-9. That's the name they have listed. If they do have a doing business as, that's what you would want to list there. You know, maybe it's, I don't know, ABC Company. Maybe that's their doing business as. So that way when you do searches, it's going to come up either way. You'll be able to find that company. Then what you would do is from your W-9, you're going to pull your tax ID number, and you'll be able to type that information in here. We're just going to put in some numbers to pretend. The next step that you would do is your company type, and that's where I was explaining there's a few different types of companies that we would put into ProLiant. So you can see we've got the bidders only, do not have a W-9. The customers, which are the owners, also do not need a W-9 if you do not plan on paying them money. The vendors that are not paid, again, that's a similar example to the bidders only. It's just people that we're not intending on paying. And then your V code, which is the most popular one that you're going to have. That's anybody you're paying money to, suppliers, subcontractors, and you do need a W-9 for that one. So you'd want to select the code that best fits what you're doing. And then I'm going to go ahead and expand these sections so you can see what the other sections are. Now there are a couple items here that are required. You don't see a star there, but they are required, and it will let you know that if you try to save and submit without it. The two things that are also required are going to be your work areas and your CSI division. So under work area, we'll just go in and add a line. And this can be updated later if you find that somebody's working in other areas as well. But we'll just go ahead and plug in Iowa, Des Moines. And then under the CSI division, you're just going to want to best match what this vendor or subcontractor is doing for you. You can do a search up here. Right now it's by code. If you don't know the code and you just want to search by description and you type in electric, it will narrow it down to you and give you anything that has the word electric in it, and you'd be able to narrow that down. You can also select more than one, so if they are available to do multiple things, you can select multiple items. Another one I want to point out here is if you are doing an owner and you're doing that C code, there is the option for owner here, so just type in owner and you'll be able to select that for them. Otherwise, they're pretty straightforward. You're just wanting to select whatever is closest to what that sub or vendor is performing, what type of work. So let's go ahead and hit OK, and that's going to add in all those items for us. The next step that you would do is to actually attach that W-9. So I can click on the attach button, and I'm not on my regular computer, so I'm just going to see if I can't find a document to attach. There's something we'll attach. So attach your W-9 into ProLiant, and then what you'll do is you will save. Now again, I'm not able to do this right now because I don't have an actual vendor that I'm trying to create, so I'm not going to hit that save button, but that would be my next step. After that, I'm going to go ahead and submit for activation. Now once you submit for activation, you're just going to hit execute, and it will not go to anyone. The next step after that is that you'll actually add a location. So I'm going to jump out of this one here, and I'm going to go into another example. We're going to use Jim's John's for an example here. So you can see on this main screen all my information here that I had put in. Jim's John's, there's that company type. If you scroll down a little bit more, you'll see this one is actually an older one, so it doesn't have the work areas or the CSI division chosen, but if we ever needed to update this vendor, those would be required at that time. So up here at the top then, we'll have the ability to select references, and this is where we're going to add in our location. Now in this case, we've got one location here. This works the same whether you're adding in your first location, second, third location. It all works the same. So what you would do is come over here to this new button, and it's important that you select that drop-down arrow because you're going to be given 3 different options. You can have your main location, which should be the location that you're pulling from your W-9. So if this is the first time you're entering in a new vendor, you're going to select that main location. Any other locations that they have, we would select general. And then the remit to, if you do have a P.O. box that maybe checks are going to for that vendor, you can select a remit to location, and any check that would be mailed out for that vendor would go to that remit to location. So you can see here that on this location, we've filled out a few different items. I'm going to go ahead and do an example of it, as well as we'll come back and look at a completed one. So I'm going to just select general location. And the first step that I'll do is I'm going to type in my location, city, state for that location for that vendor. So let's say that we needed to add in a location of Clive, Iowa. What I would do is just type in Clive, no commas, no periods. We just want to do Clive, space, and then the capital letters for the state. So Clive, Iowa is what we would list there. So again, no commas, and we want to capitalize the state initial. The other two items that are going to be required when you're creating a new location is your phone number and your address. So you have to have one of each. You can have multiple phone numbers, you can have multiple addresses within that, but you cannot have neither one listed. They both need to be completed for this to save okay. So once I clicked add line, I'm given the option to type in my telephone number for that vendor. So we'll just plug in 515-309-8525. And this is the main number, so I can leave that. If I wanted to maybe add in a cell phone number, I could do that as well, and then go in and type in a cell phone number and change that option to cell, and so on and so forth. You can add as many as you need to. And then under addresses, we'll click add line, and we can just type in the information of that address. Once you've typed in all that information, you can hit the save button, and then we're going to workflow it to submit activation. Once you select that workflow to submit activation, you will see that there's people selected for it to go to in our Minneapolis office. Once it gets into their hands, they will activate this vendor for us. And let me just go back to the example that I had up before of our vendor. Oh, I lost it here. Okay, so you can see here that we've got our location, Des Moines, Iowa, for the example, and then there's our address. And again, this is an older one, so you may see that there's not a phone number here. If we were going to update this information, it would be required at that time. This is a requirement that we have now. So phone number and address will need to be there. So just, once you submit it for activation, it goes to Minneapolis, and I believe their rule of thumb is still about 24 hours to allow them time to get that vendor activated for us. And once it is activated, you'll receive a ProLiance notification letting you know that it's active. And then at that point, you would see that you have a vendor number. So right here on the left, you can see that this does have a vendor number now. So just to take that one away here for a moment, I'll show you just a couple other examples of other types. So right here we've got the C code, so that's an owner that we're looking at here. These are all V codes, so these are all vendors, subcontractors. So that's the difference between those two items. The next thing to look at is a contact for a location. So let me jump back in here, and we'll pick on another subcontractor. So you will not be able to add a contact for a new vendor until that vendor is set up. So until you have that vendor number, that in this case 117240, once you have that, then you can set up a contact. So what I'll do, I've got my vendor set up. I come into my references, my locations. I'll be able to see that those are set up for this vendor. I've got a location here. And then if I come to contacts, in this case I have a lot of contacts for this subcontractor. But let's say I have another one that I need to enter. I can come up to this new button here, and then I just fill out the information for that new person. So this is Lisa Test, their project manager. We've got the company that's going to auto fill in for us. Location, again, as long as that location has been activated, you'll be able to select that location. So if you had a location of Clive for this person, you would need to make sure you get that location set up before you enter in a new contact. You will only be able to pick them once they're activated. So we can select the Des Moines location. And then in this case, phone numbers is required. You will need to have a phone number for them. Again, you have the option of listing multiple phone numbers. So if you have a main number, you have a cell phone number, a fax number, you can continue adding lines and add in all the phone numbers that you have for that contact. The last thing would be email address. You can see there's not an asterisk by that. It's not required to start with. So if you have information for your new contact, but you just don't have their email address yet, you can get the ball rolling and get that submitted to Minneapolis for approval without the email. And then once you get that email, you can go back into that vendor and type it in. So just to show you a completed example of that, we'll look at Julie here. I can go in and edit Julie's account, and I can come down here to email address, and I can see I've got a field that can be edited. So if I find out her email address changed, I can come in here and update that, or if we didn't have one to begin with, I can add in that email for her. So you can go back and make some adjustments. Same with, title. That's another example of a field that could be edited later. So once you've created that information that you need, again, you're just going to hit that Save button, and you're going to workflow to submit for activation. That will also bring up an auto field that will let you know that it's going off to the Minneapolis office to get approval. And just like your location and your vendor information, you will get a ProLines notification letting you know once that person has been activated. The next thing that I want to look at within the contact area is if someone needs to have an account with ProLines. So I know we're heading in that direction where we want to have our subcontractors have access to ProLines. So the way you do that is you do have to start on this organization side. So let's say I wanted to get Julie access. I know that Julie does have access, but we'll look at that first to see what a completed account looks like. What I would do is get into my edit mode, and then I'm going to select this account link. And you can see here that Julie has an account with us. Her username is J. Wood. She does not have organization access. It does not tell me what her password is because she will be given the opportunity to change her password. So, and I'll show you how to do that here in just a moment. But I can't see her password, but I could reset it for her. I'll come back to that. But this is how I can tell that Julie does in fact have an account in ProLines. So let's go to somebody who does not have an account and see about giving them one. Okay, so Chad does not have an account in ProLines. So again, I'm going to want to get into that edit mode, and I'm going to go to the account link. And then you can see here I've got this create account. And there are instructions on the wiki page. So if you go to the home page of ProLines, or excuse me, the Ryan Company's home page, and go to the wiki pages, there are instructions on how to do this as well. So our account type right now is listed as none. So what we're going to give them is a user account. And then again, we don't want to, no organization access. We would not want to check mark that. That should not be there. The username is going to be the first initial of their first name. So this is Chad, so C, and then the first 7 letters of his last name. And in this case, he just happens to have a 7-letter last name, so it works out. And if he does not, you shorten it up to that. Essentially, your username is not more than 8 characters long. If you run into an issue where maybe this is we'll say this is Chad Smith. Maybe there's a lot of people with the username C. Smith. You'll just have to adjust that username so that it works. It will not allow you to have duplicate usernames. So in that case, if this was Chad Smith, I might put C.H. Smith. Just as long as your total username doesn't go past the 8 characters, you'll be fine. For the password, what we put here, our standard rule for password is that it's Ryan, and then we list their vendor number. So if I just scoot that down a little bit, I can see I've got my vendor number right here. So I'm going to type in that 117240. And then I'll need to type that again, Ryan 117240. The next step is that we list this as password never expires. What that means is that they will be required and asked to change their password. You can see that here, must change password on the next login. So when Chad gets this notification, we let him know that, I should take that back, he's not going to get a notification from ProLiance. He's going to be notified because I let him know that he has a ProLiance account. So when we let him know that, he'll log in the first time and then he will be asked to change his password. So this means that password that he selects is never going to expire. He doesn't have to have his password changing on him. So I'm going to go ahead and click OK. And then I'll see the screen that it looked a little bit more like when we looked at that completed account for Julie. So you can see here it's filled in my username, no organization access, password's not expiring. The next step would be under this program and project management, we want to select contributor PPM. And it's very, very important that you give them contributor and not standard. Standard will let them have access to much more information than they should have access to. So contributor PPM. And then we'll also want to check mark ProLiance viewer and redlining. And lastly, we want to make sure that enable notification and their email address is listed. Sometimes this auto fills in for you and sometimes it does not. I have not discovered the reasoning behind it being there or not being there, but sometimes it will be there for you and then sometimes you'll just have to fill in that email address for yourself. Once you've done that, you can go ahead and save. You'll be asked if you want to save and synchronize with other projects. One thing to mention about this, you can do that, you can save and synchronize, but that contact will not have access to these projects until I give it to him. This is not giving him access to these projects at all. It may be updating an address for him, but it's not giving him access to an account. So it really doesn't make a big difference if you do save only or save and synchronize. We'll go ahead and save and synchronize. And what this means is that Chad now has an account in ProLiance, but until I tell him what his username and password is, and until I actually give him access to a project, he really won't be able to do much with ProLiance. So let's go ahead and close that. And then let's say I do want to add Chad to a project. Let me back up one step actually. I need to add this location for Chad first. Let's say I want to add him to a project. I need to make sure that his location is also on that project. So let's go through the step of adding a vendor to your project. So what I did is I just backed up, and let me go all the way back just to be clear. I'm going to find Baker Electric. This is my vendor that I want, so I'm going to go ahead and click that open. I'm going to go to the References tab. I'm going to select the location that I want to export to my project, and I'm going to go to the Tools button. When I select that, I have the ability to add selected to the project. So I want to add that selected location to my project. So it's going to bring up the address that we're trying to export. I'm going to select Next, and then I'm going to find the project that I actually want to add him to. I can search by number up here. I can search by name. Either way is going to work for me. So either one, you can do the search. And let's say that I want to add him to this project here. I'm not going to click the Finish button because I'm not actually interested in putting him on this project. But all I would have to do is hit the Finish button, and that vendor and that location is now on my Beaver Creek 2 project. So job number 3295 now has that location added to it. Once I'm done exporting that location, I would go to my Contacts tab. And then I would find the contact that I want to add to the project. So Chad is my contact. And I'm going to select Tool, Add Selected Contacts to. It's always projects in a program, so that defaults. You just select Next. The next one is the Ryan program. Pretty easy to select since the other one says Do Not Use. We'll hit Next. And then what's going to come up is our option of, again, selecting the project that we want to add this contact to. And the thing to note while we're waiting for this is that you can only add these one at a time to a project. So if you're trying to export Baker Electric to multiple jobs, you would only be able to do one job at a time. Unfortunately, this at times takes just a little bit longer than maybe we would want it to, but there it comes. So again, I can search by a number, I can search by a name, either one works. I can select that project I'm trying to export my contact to. I select Next. And then you can see here that it says that Chad has an account with ProLiant. This checkbox is telling me that I want to grant him access to this project. So he can log in and he can see information on this project. If that's what I want to have happen, I have to select a security a security category. If I don't select that security category and this grant access box is marked, it will not work. It won't allow you to do it. The security categories, there's a few different ones that you would use, but right down at the bottom, most of these apply to Ryan Company's people. They're ones that we use. But down here at the bottom, we have subcontractor and we have subcontractor uploader tool. Now the difference between these two means if we select just this plain subcontractor, it means that Chad could go into ProLiant, he can select new, and he can add in his own submittals. He can create submittals, he can add them in. If we select the subcontractor uploader tool, it means that the new button is grayed out, and Chad cannot enter in his own submittals. And the reason that it says that uploader tool is we have that function where we can put all the submittals in there for our project, and all Chad would do is just attach his submittal to an already created link in ProLiant. So we've already got our lighting fixtures in there. He just needs to attach his actual submittal to that instead of creating a whole new submittal. So the uploader tool security category is going to prevent people from creating their own submittals. If you are doing it that way and you are using that uploader tool, this is a good function to pick because then they won't be entering in more submittals and kind of messing up the submittal log and having multiple submittals in there for the same thing. So either one of these security categories works. Just depends on your project and how you're handling that, on which one you would select. Once you do that, you would receive this Start Adding Contacts button. So let me just go ahead and pick that so you can see. Now I can say Start Adding Contacts. And the reason it does say Start Adding Contacts, when I said that you can only export one location to one project at a time, that is true, but you can export more than one contact to a project at a time. So if we had a couple people from Baker Electric that we wanted to add, we could do them all at the same time. And I will show you that when we look at adding staff to a project, because that's a really great example. You usually want to add a bunch of people at one time. So we'll look at that here in just a minute. So I would be able to start adding contacts and add in Chad. Once I do that, he now has access to ProLiant on that particular project. So you would need to export him to multiple projects if you wanted him to have access to multiple jobs. Another thing to point out on this screen here is maybe I had already exported Chad to this project, but he didn't have an account in ProLiance, and it was decided that yes, he needs to have an account in ProLiance. What I would need to do is exactly what I just did, except I'm going to do overwrite. If you do not select that overwrite button, he still will not have access to ProLiance for that project. So if the first time you export someone to a project, you don't need to select this overwrite button. But anytime you do it after that, select that overwrite button so that it overrides anything you had previously exported to that project. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cancel that and move on to, let's see, actually one more item regarding that. If you wanted to remove someone from having access, maybe you don't want them to have access to ProLiance anymore, you can also remove them in that same way. I wish I wouldn't have closed that quite yet, but instead of having that box marked as grant access, you would just uncheck it and take away their access. Again, make sure you select that overwrite button, and then it will take access away from that person. So you do that in a very similar fashion. The next item on the address book side on the org side is the org companies. When you first start a project, so you've created your project in ProLiance and you are just getting it set up, one of the first things you want to do is you want to export your office's location to your project. So what you do to do that, it's very similar to exporting a vendor. There's really not a difference. So this is the one that we use for Ryan Companies. We are number 101. And when I select this, just like a vendor, I can go to the References tab, and I can see all of our office locations listed here. So I would just find the location that my office is in, where this project is being managed out of. I select a box next to it. I go to Tools, I add Selected Project to, and we'll go through the same steps that we did before. There's my location. I select Next. I'm going to find the project that I want to add it to. I'll select that, and I'll hit Finish. What that correlates back to is our contracts, our change orders, our transmittals. Any document that we are producing out of ProLiance is going to have that address listed on it. So if we don't export this location, it's going to be blank for you. It will not fill it in. And I can show you an example of that if you guys choose to see that at the end. We can look at that. But just make sure you export your location at the beginning of a project, and you won't run into any problems with that. Your address will show up on all your different documents that you produce from ProLiance. The last area on the org side to look at is the staff. So this is a case where, again, if you want to export more than one person at a time, you can do that. And I would highly recommend it. It saves a lot of time doing that. Come on. So what we'll do here, and you can use this search function. Just because it's not on the screen does not mean it's not going to keep your check marks. So let's say we want Aaron, and we'll find myself, and maybe I want to add our field coordinator. You can search by first name, you can search by last name. You can check mark as many as you need to. Once you do that, you go up to Tools, Add Selected Staff To, and you're going to go through the exact same process that you did for exporting a vendor contact. I'm going to go ahead and go through this so you can see what that screen looks like when you're exporting multiple people at one time, and also to show you that Ryan Company people have security categories assigned to them when they are first set up in ProLiant. If for any reason you need to change that security category, you can do that. That function is still there, but it will autofill for you when you do that. While we're waiting for this, let's say you wanted to export these people to maybe more than one project. You can do this only for one project at a time. But the thing that I would tell you, and just a little tip, is that when you come back out here to export to another project, it's going to keep everybody check marked for you. Everybody's going to stay check marked. So that's great if you want to export the same people. If you don't, hit that reset button and start over. Find the people you want to export to the next project. Otherwise, you're going to get to the part where you are ready to export them, and you're going to have a bunch of people that you didn't really want to export. So use that reset button. Boy, this is taking a little more time than I would like to see it taking. You guys probably can still recall what that looked like. So when it gets to the point, what we're waiting for here is, of course it comes up now, we're going to type in our job number. We'll select that project, select next, and this is where we're going to see that their security categories are automatically filled in. If for any reason that's not the security category you wanted them to have, maybe this is an insurance approver and you want them to have that access, you can give them that access. You can change those things. So these are not set in stone, but they, for the most part, are what you want and what works. Again, we just hit start adding contacts, and those people would then have access to that project. Okay. So the next thing to look at is on the project level. So we'll go back to our home screen, and we're going to select projects. And there's just a couple things that I want to show you here. So let's look at this Delta Dental project. The first thing that I want to show you is under companies. If you search by companies, you can see all the companies that have been exported to this project. If I go into, let's, for example, go into Bailey. If I go to the References tab and I look at locations, I can see that they were exported without a location. The company was exported, but their location was not. So let's look at one where it was done. And what that means is that we'll need to go back to the organization side, and we actually need to export that location. So on Architectural Wall Systems, we look at the References tab, we see locations. There is a location here. So that is good. If you look at Bailey's, again, and you look at the References tab, and you don't have that here, what that means is when I go to print their contract, or when I go to print a change order, their address is not going to be there. In similar fashion to if we don't export the Ryan Company's location, where we're at, our address is not going to show up. So it's important that you actually export the location and not just the vendor. If we go down to contacts, I can see all the contacts that have been added. So what you can see here is what kind of access they have. So if I come here and I want to see Brandon Hummel's account, I can see he was exported, but does he have access to this project? Once I open that up, I can look at this account link, and I can see that Brandon does have access to this project. If this was blank, it means that he may have an account, but he doesn't have access to this particular project. So I can also look down here to see what kind of access he has, what can he do. This is what his security role is, and this is what he's able to see and do in ProLiant. I can see that he has a password, but I can't tell what it is. We can't tell on the org side. We can't tell on the project side. If we need to have their password reset, we can easily do that. It's just that click of that button back on the account screen in the org side. And I can scoot back there here in just a minute to show you that one more time. So that's what I can see under contacts on the project side. The last thing to show you, aside from just going back to the org side and showing you that reset button again, if you go to this distribution list, if you have not used these before, if this is new, I highly recommend them. They're wonderful. You can create the distribution list for whatever you want them to be. In this case, I've got a subcontractor distro list. I've got 22 people that are a member of it. What's great about this is I just keep this subcontractor distro list updated, and if I want to send something out via ProLiance to all my subs that are on board, I can just click this button instead of selecting all these different contacts at one time, and I will show you how you do that. If I just needed to add somebody, I click on that members link, and I can add contacts. So I can see who's all got access to, or not access, but who is all included in my distro list for subcontractors. And I've got them all listed here, and I can add contacts anytime I want to. And I can continue to update that distribution list. They can be as many people as you want. They can be as little people as you want. This one has 9 people on it. In this case, I'm calling it my MEP submittals. Any of my mechanical, electrical, plumbing submittals that come back need to go to these people. So instead of me forgetting about Andrew one time, I've created a distro list, and I just select that each time I send it back. So I'm just going to scoot up here to my submittals, for example. And I'm just going to open one of these up and show you an example. So let's say I want to send this submittal on to a group of people. I'm just going to use that forward button. It works the same with workflow. So I can go to this too, and I can either select each of my contacts myself, or I can come up here in this right-hand corner, and I can change this to say distribution list. Then it's going to bring up those 3 distribution lists that I have. I can select that I want this to go to all my MEP submittal people. That's the distribution I'm looking for, and it lists them all here. Everybody is listed. So I didn't have to go through and pick every individual. I didn't miss anybody because I had an updated distribution list that I was able to use. So it's very slick to use that distribution list, and I highly recommend it. They come in quite handy. So I'm going to jump back just real quick to that home page. I just want to show you one more time that reset button. And I also just want to recap on exporting a location, since we looked at that one example where it was not exported. So I'm going to go in here to vendor companies. And I'm going to go ahead and search for that Bailey Roofing. It happens quite often that people forget what their passwords are. You can relate. We've got passwords for everything. So if our subs or vendors ever call us and ask us to reset their password, they don't know what it is, it's very easy to do that, assuming ProLiance and the Internet is cooperating with you and coming up at any sort of speed. I think if I tell it I'm going to quit, it usually comes up then. Maybe not. Well, what I'll be doing once this comes back up, hopefully, is we're going to do a search for Bailey Roofing. We're going to find that vendor, and then I'm going to go into that particular person that I wanted to update their password. I'm going to go into that account field, just where, same place I went to create it, and there's going to be a reset button there. If this doesn't cooperate with us, we'll just, I'll be definitely available for questions. If you guys want to, get a hold of me, I can send you some screenshots as well, since unfortunately this isn't going anywhere. But there's just a reset button. It's going to ask you what you want the password to be, and here we go. Hopefully it continues to cooperate. Okay, so I'm going to go to the References tab, Contacts, and let's say Joe forgot what his password was. I'm going into his account. I do need to be in edit mode. I'll select that account, and right here I can reset the password. It's just asking me what the new password is and confirm what the new password is, and that's it. So once I do that, you can use that same format, that Ryan and then their vendor number, or just do a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let them know what their new password is, and then they will be able to get in there, and they will be asked to change their password again once they go in. So that it's very simple to reset their password. And then the last thing I just wanted to recap for you is just exporting that location. So I'm coming back here, I'm still in the References tab. I'm going back to Location, and I need to actually export the location. So what probably happened in the example of Bailey Roofing, if I just close that real quickly, if you check mark this box and you go up to Tools and Add to Project, it's only going to add that vendor. It's not going to add a location, and most likely that's what happened. So we'll go back to References. I'll check mark the box now next to the location that I want. Tools, Add Selected to Project. There's my Urbandale address. I select Next. I find that project that I want to add them to. Mark next to the box, and I select Finish and Close. And now, if I go back to that project, I will see that they have a location available there. One more quick thing, and then we will be all done. So I'm going to scoot back to projects. I'm going to go into this Beaver Creek project, and I want to show you how to produce a project directory out of ProLiance. There's two different ways to do this. So from ProLiance, from your project, where you would go is actually to the dashboard. And this is a function that was here prior to some of these additional dashboards. So you do go to the financial dashboard. And from there, you can see that there are a few different reports you can pull. So you can pull a project directory from right here. When you do that, it produces to a PDF automatically. So you would not be able to make any edits to it from here. But I will show you real quickly when we're done where you can go so that you could make those edits. So you can see here, any of these with addresses next to them, those are good. That means that their address was exported to ProLiance. Had we pulled this before we exported Bailey Roofing, their address would not have shown up here. Also, just so you know where this information is pulling from, this scope of work column is pulling from their contract. So if they do not have a contract, so in the case of this Bishop Engineering, they do not have a contract with us. They need access to the project because they are designers, but we are actually not holding their contract. So that's why that is not pulling and there's no information there. Same with these are owners, tenants. They don't have a contract. It's just pulling from their contract over here. So real quickly, I'll just scoot back to our internet home page, and I'm going to show you where you can pull this information into a different format that you would be able to edit. So if I go to Tools and Construction Reporting, and this section works for more than just producing a project directory. You can see here it looks very similar to what that screen looked like in ProLiance. I can also pull an insurance log from here. There's other information you can get from here, but we're just looking at the project directory right now. I can select that, and it's going to give me an option of what I want that to be. So I can select my format, and maybe I want it in Word, maybe I want it in Excel. Whatever you want it in, you just select it, export it, and it's going to be in that format. And then you would be able to make any edits that you want to that, and then at that point you can produce it to a PDF if you wish to do that. So you can see now I've got it in a format that can actually have changes made to it. So those are the ways to pull a project directory. And that is all that I have. Regarding address book, there's a lot of different topics in it, but they all, like you saw, whether it be a vendor, an owner, or just Ryan's staff, the export process of getting it over to your project works very similar. in all those different ways. So once you learn one way, it's really easy to pick up on doing the other items. So thank you everyone for joining. I'm going to go ahead and unmute everyone.